Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about VoIP phones, that's voice over IP. A lot of schools asking about changing because their old analog phones are old and they can't really buy them, or they actually cost more money because of supply and demand. So few businesses are buying those analog phones. You can only buy like a refurbished one. Then you have to get a local company to help you get it on your local system with an extension. If you're going to add on, it can be difficult to find someone who still works with that equipment. So a lot of schools are like, hey, can we do this VoIP phone system? It's really not expensive, right? They're going to throw out a big number. Somebody's going to throw out some big numbers. They're going to tell you you need the Cat6 cabling. You need the 10 gigabit fiber transceivers. You need the PoE switches. You need this, you need that. And then, of course, they want to be the company that installs that stuff. And even if you already had all that stuff, or even if they weren't telling you about all that, they're still going to want a lot of money to put in this phone system. Once again, this channel is about helping you save money and do things with realistic budgets. That's what I'm all about. And I'm just going to show you the numbers here. And it's cheap. You got to find a guy like me, just a guy with ways and means of getting things done, and pay him well. And believe me, that person will pay for themselves. So a VoIP phone system really only needs three things. You need the phones, which are essentially the cheapest part. This particular model is $70 and it looks really nice. I think I would have to pay $70 to swap out my stupid Avaya, whatever version it is, some really crummy looking one where the LCD is always fading away. It's just a single line that shows you, the extension that's calling you. This one looks really nice. It's made by, I will say this is made by a great value company, a company that sells for a lower price but still a good quality device. And the name is Grandstream. I used to live in Asia and I know that they love to put the word rich or grand in like everything. It's just part of their culture. I'm sure these are made in China. I'm not sure, but I would assume they are. But that's just the way society is these days. I mean, even if you buy the Cisco or the Avaya, I bet you that was made in China too. So this particular phone is 70, but they sell some for 40 or 50 bucks if you're on a real tight budget, and they have some with like some really big color displays for like 150 if you want something fancy for your secretary. Under your secretary, a nice one, right? So you're like, okay, well, the phones are about the same price or maybe a tiny bit more, really about the same price as like a regular phone, right? So you're like, well, where's the big cost coming, right? And I'm here to tell you, it's not, there is none. So here we have the phone server, and this is called an IP PBX, private branch exchange, or your local server for your phones, right? So if you were just to get the phones and this is cheap, that would just allow you to make those intercom calls within your own organization. That would let you, control. You're controlling all the phones from this one device. And of course, this isn't like a laptop. You're not like on this device, right? It's just plugged into the network, and then you give it an IP address, and then you would, you'd log into it from any computer, and you would use the software that way. But this machine is only $300. I mean, they sell a bigger rack mount one that looks more like a real server. Probably holds hard drives if for some reason you wanted to record people's conversations, like you're the NSA or something out there. But this thing is $300. I would definitely recommend buying two for redundancy. This is like your whole phone system, right? That's a little scary. But that's only $600. I mean, that's cheap, right? And I mean, I'm sure that one would really last a long time. If one ever breaks, you just put on the other one until that's fixed, or you just buy another for $300. I mean, that's cheap. So that'll keep you with your local system, and you could just try it, right? You could buy two $50 phones and one $300 server. That's going to set you back $400. You can try it. So what am I saying? I mean, you do need, good quality switches, hopefully gigabit switches. But think about it. I mean, voice is a very tiny bit of data. How much is it? Well, it's 64 kilobits of data. Maybe with overhead, it's 128 kilobits of data, maybe even 250, maybe a quarter of a megabyte per phone call. I mean, a quarter of a single megabyte per phone call? I guess you really don't need gigabit switches, do you? But that's about like the rest of your traffic on your network, right? You want the other devices to still run, but this will get the priority at the gateway, at the router, not about the switch. You don't really have to worry about the switches as long as they have good enough connectivity. Usually your internal gigabit connections, and gigabit switches are cheap too. We'll talk about that in another episode. But your internal connections are so fast that it really doesn't matter, because the bottleneck, or it doesn't really have to be a bottleneck, but the sticking point is the router, the gateway that goes to your internet, because you're only paying for 200 megabits, and yet everything internal is a gigabit or higher. If you only have gigabit and you want higher, just put in 2 Ethernet lines, and then all of a sudden you're running 2 gigabit. I mean, it's really not hard stuff, right? So I mean, you could try this out for $400. You could try this out inside your school. That's fantastic. So there's so to get from your school to call people or to have people call into you, it's really easy. You just need something called a SIP, or a SIP trunk, and that's just turning IP traffic into phone traffic, turning phone traffic into IP traffic. It's really simple. And it's pretty cheap. It's something like $25 per line. They quoted me less when I called. This is SIP.us. That's a very popular one, but if you look up SIP trunking companies, I don't want to say they're a dime a dozen, because they do charge, right? So, I mean, how many lines does your school need? 4, 5, 3, 6? I mean, it's pretty cheap. If you're paying for 6 already, I know that this is going to be a lot cheaper. If you're paying for 3 basic lines, it actually might not be. If you're in an area that does like a $25 line, and if your phones are all good, then I don't even know why you're watching this, right? Because you don't need it. I mean, there's really no crazy good benefit to these phones. There are some, like if someone calls a teacher and leaves a voicemail, like these have the benefit of being on the internet, so they can like email the voicemail to the teacher, and that way the teacher could like get the voicemail, or the administrator could get the voicemail. They have some nice little new things like that, but for the most part, I mean, it's just a phone, right? This particular one you can call with 5 people in the call, so I guess you could call like 5 different people and do like a voice chat. But nowadays with Zoom, you could just Zoom with everybody, so it's not as important as it used to be. All right, let's take a look at the numbers here. So the phones are something like 50 to 150 a piece. I mean, that phone that I had just up there was 70. So I don't know how many phones you would need in a school. I forgot to mention, this could be an intercom, right? I mean, maybe you're already doing this with your phones, right? But a lot of schools don't still have intercom. Like, they didn't think it was worth the money to redo the intercom. I know sometimes like the touch boards nowadays have like an intercom system too, but these phones have decent speakers, and it could work as a intercom system. You just, you do the all call to all the phones, and then you just talk over the little speaker in the phone. And you can also like get in on somebody else's phone and like listen in on their class, right? So it acts similar to an intercom system. That's another benefit. So let's say that you have, I don't know, 50 phones at $70 a piece. 50 phones at $70 a piece. 50 phones at $70 a piece. So $3,500. That's really not a lot of money for phones, right? For everybody to have a nice phone. I mean, this is a nice looking phone. People would feel good if it's not like, I've seen the phones. I've seen those old analog phones. They have like fungus and things growing in the mouthpiece. I mean, they're gross, right? And they're hard to replace. So I think people would really appreciate that. Remember to always buy extra. Never pay for a warranty. Just buy a few extra. The server itself, we talked about how it was really just 2 $300 servers, and that came to be 600. I just put 1,000 here, so now what are we up? We're up to 4,500. And then these SIP trunks, I'm just saying maybe it spent $200 a month on the SIP trunks or something. And after taxes, it's like $260. That also includes fax to email. I mean, it doesn't include it, you pay extra for it, but that's kind of like, this was kind of like 6 SIPs plus fax to email plus a couple other services that you pay for. You don't just pay for the SIP trunk, you also pay for the phone numbers, but they're pretty cheap. Let's say you had 6 phone numbers, it's like, I don't know what it is, like $100. Not $100, it's like $18 a month or something. If you wanted to be able to call 911, it's like $18. If you don't really care, it's like $10 a month for 6 lines. I mean, it's super cheap for the phone numbers to be attached. So 200, it also includes, someone sends you a fax. So before you were paying for a fax number, now you're just paying $15 a month. And when they send you a fax, it just automatically puts it in a PDF in your mail. Cheap. I don't know about these schools and these fax machines. I mean, they get spammed nonstop all day. Who in the world just sends out spam faxes all day long? You know how much money I've seen schools? They're replacing that ink cartridge on that fax machine every week. It's ridiculous. Makes me laugh. So, the PDF or the email-based fax, that's a great service to your school. And you can send it out. You send out the email, and it turns it back into a fax. You can go in reverse as well. There's another feature which was like an app on a phone, an Apple iPhone or a Samsung Galaxy phone or whatever it is. There's an app where you could actually make calls through the work phone. Not really a fan of that. I mean, I know people are kind of even moving away from work phones. Like you're just like everybody has a cell phone. Do I even need phones in the classroom? Maybe you don't. Right? Maybe. But I mean, a lot of these are like business applications, right? These aren't like special phones made for schools. All right, so looking at the math here, 7 phone numbers. I have a school that pays for 7 phone numbers. Mind you, one is for an elevator phone and one is for a fire alarm, and you really have to keep the fire alarm on a landline. Remember, if the internet goes out, you lose all phones. So the fire alarm, possibly a backup line that you might just need. I know people think they don't really need phones anymore, but people love to call small schools and just chit-chat. Can't believe the secretaries, right? They just love to chit-chat, and that gives it the homey feel. It's important, right? I hear them on the phone, and I say, man, I could have handled that phone call in 30 seconds, and they're still talking about grandbabies and this and that. It certainly is a part of the community. So this school is paying $460 a month on their Spectrum phone bill. I think it's funny when the internet's $200 and then the phone is $460. What in the world? So with VoIP, that would be something like $280, like a very realistic end price, like $280, like with the fax service and all those SIPs and 7 different lines with 911 and all this stuff. So better, in theory, better quality service as long as your internet doesn't get messed up. And you have to put a rule, right? You put a rule on your router, on your gateway, just saying prioritize voice traffic. Whenever there's a phone call, let it go in front of all the internet. Remember, it's small, so it doesn't really matter, but you have to add that rule to your internet connection. And that's free to do. Free to do. So this equates to saving $180 per month, or something like $10,000 over the short period of 5 years. I mean, that would totally pay. That would have paid for the super fancy phones. We said $70 phones, but we could have done the $140 phones for $7 grand, $8 grand, $8 grand in total. You could have still made up all that money over just 5 short years. I mean, that's an incredible return on investment for better quality and not full of bacteria phones. That's great. Of course, if you're having to pay for the fire alarm line and a backup line, you're going to save a lot less because you're still having to pay for those. But those are important. So maybe it would really take you 10 years to make it up or something like that, but it's still great. Right? All right. Thanks for watching.